Welcome. My name is Julie Kramer, and I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to spend this time with you. Today, we'll be learning a practice that involves working with our true selves, a beautiful spiritual resource and ally that I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to introduce you to. And first and foremost, what I'd love to do is give you a sense as to how our time together will unfold, and then we'll begin. So, first, I would love to lead you in a guided practice to help everyone arrive and settle. And then I'll introduce the true self to you, this gorgeous ally that we're here to begin to form a relationship with. And then I'll introduce the practice that we're going to use to encounter, to connect with, to experience our true selves. And then you'll actually engage in that practice. So that entire arc will take about 90 minutes or so, just to give you a sense as to how much time we'll be spending together. And in order to help everyone arrive and settle, I would love to lead you in a guided practice first and foremost. So I'll invite you to take a moment to check in with your body. Noticing how your body is positioned in this moment, how you're seated, or perhaps how you're reclined or even lying down. And what, if anything, you could do to help your body feel more at ease and more at rest in this moment. So let's take a moment together to make those fine adjustments. And once it feels as though you've created as much comfort as you can in the place where you are, let's take 3 long, full, deep breaths together. And noticing how with each exhalation, your body settles further and further, and also softens more and more. To begin our practice, I'd like to invite you to place your palms over your heart center, one palm over the other, resting upon your heart center. And breathing into your heart center, noticing that for some of you, there may be an immediate sense of the radiance of your heart light. This is the light that naturally emanates from your heart center, the light of spirit that animates your body and creates a natural quality of luminosity. And some of you may begin to notice certain colors or certain sensations. You may begin to notice certain qualities or feelings. This light that naturally emanates through your heart center is the light of your divinity. everyone has this light. And as you begin to contact this light and begin to experience it, I'd like to invite you to consider that you're experiencing your goodness, your purity, and also a sense of oneness because this light animates everyone and everything. And you may feel inclined, as I often am, to use your hands to begin to invite this beautiful light emanating from your heart center to radiate out in all directions. So it begins to feel as though it's filling up your body from the inside out, and also filling up the proprioceptive field, or the magnetic field, or the etheric field that surrounds your body, so that the space between the surface of your skin and the edge of that field begins to become illuminated. And some of you may find this happens of its own accord. And as I mentioned a moment ago, some of you may find that it's helpful to use your hands to draw that light out to those edges. And as your heart light continues to fill you up from the inside out, once again, noticing how it makes itself known to you in this moment, how it presents itself to you. Is there becoming a greater sense of clarity about the qualities of your heart light? Are you experiencing warmth inside your body and warmth radiating through your skin? You may be experiencing an effervescent quality, like champagne bubbles rising within you. And those bubbles may flow out all the way to the edge of your field. I would invite you to bring particular attention to ensuring that your heart light is shining behind you, filling up the space behind you, so that eventually you could trace the outline of an egg-shaped bubble all the way around you, above your head, beneath your feet, out in front of you, behind you along your posterior chain, and then to either side of you. And what's already beginning to happen for some of you is that your subtle senses of perception are beginning to open. These are the correlates to our physical senses that enable us to perceive in the invisible realm, or that enable us to perceive that which is invisible to the naked eye. These are called the clairs. And so what's beginning to open is clairvoyance, beginning to see perhaps colors or sparkles. Clairsentience, beginning to experience subtle sensations. Clairaudience, you may be beginning to hear possibly words from your helping spirits. Also claircognizance, where there's simply a knowing when truth becomes instantly available and accessible, and wisdom becomes instantly available and accessible. The reason we're beginning here with our heart lights is at once to invite those subtle senses to gently and organically open, and also because it's through our heart lights that we perceive our helping spirits, our spirit guides, or benevolent spiritual allies who are dedicated to our well-being, to our evolution, to our wholeness, and to our potentiation. And I'm beginning to notice that some of your helping spirits are joining us. And so, as those subtle pathways of perception continue to open, which may feel like your aperture of perception is simply widening further, you may begin to become aware of helping spirits, perhaps standing to one side of you or the other, or perhaps standing behind you, perhaps resting upon one of your shoulders. We each have helping spirits, whether or not we've become aware of them as of yet, whether or not we've encountered them as of yet. They're nonetheless with us and nonetheless devoted to us. And so let's take a moment to begin to become aware of their presence. They're with us, whether or not we're aware of their presence. And of course, having direct experiences of them increases our conviction of their devotion to us and of their constancy. They are always with us. And using those subtle pathways of perception, we begin to develop the ability to sense them, to hear them, to see them, to feel them, to know them, to know that they're here and that they want to be in communion and in communication and in dialogue with us. And so I'd like to invite you to experience the radiance of your heart light continuing to shine forth in its natural resplendent stage. And at the edge of your field, as a beautiful counterbalance to that quality of expansiveness, the containment that comes with knowing where your boundary lies. Feeling the stability that comes with knowing where that boundary lies and allowing yourself to be as fully open, as supple and receptive as you can be in this moment. And for some of you, if you've begun to sense the presence of your helping spirits, they may assume a position flanking you or surrounding you. These may be benevolent ancestors, recent or distant. These may be benevolent animal spirits, sometimes referred to as power animals or spirit animals. These may be angelic beings. These may be other beings of light. These may be gods, goddesses, divine beings from different cultures, from different cultural and historical contexts, from different religious, spiritual, and mythological contexts. These may be allies from the natural world who animate the wild spaces that enliven us and rejuvenate us. Perhaps the spirit of a beloved favorite tree, or the spirit of a beloved favorite lake or other body of water. And so noticing whether there's a glimpse or whether there's a more continuous felt sense of the presence of a helping spirit. That by simply taking the time, resting our attention on our heart lights and inviting our helping spirits to begin to make themselves known to us, already there's a perceptual shift that begins to happen. We already very easily begin to experience a more subtle state of consciousness that enables us to perceive what's all around us all the time that we may not always be as attuned to because we typically focus on the physical world using our physical senses, consensus reality, if you will. And here, what we're doing is including within our awareness not only physical reality as per usual, but also the coexistence of multidimensional reality. That there are other spectrums of reality that exist, that coexist with the physical world, that are available and accessible. And therein lie our benevolent helping spirits who simply don't have forms as dense as our forms are at this time in these human incarnations. And so, as I continue sharing with you about the ally we're going to meet today and the practice we'll use for meeting this very specific ally, my invitation to you is to stay with your heart light, to remain just where you are, even keeping your eyes closed, if that would help you feel more receptive. I would love you to be able to receive these teachings, to hear these teachings, and perceive them through your heart light. And from that place of being in a more expansive state of consciousness. And so I'll take a few minutes now to talk about the true self and then to talk about the practice that we're going to use to meet our true selves and how we're going to work with them inside of that practice period. So, what I would like you to consider is, I think, quite a radical concept, which is the possibility that an ally exists who is your perfected self. This is an ally and a resource who carries all of your gifts, all of your unique and special affinities and qualities. This is an ally who has never been diminished, who has never been traumatized, who has never been judged, who has never been pathologized. So, this is an ally who has remained whole and completely intact throughout the course of your life. This is an ally who carries all of the gifts that you were born with. I would say the gifts from grace that you were born with in this lifetime. That this lifetime is intended to enable you to hone and express for the benefit of all beings. And so, in encountering your true self, you become more able to discover the fullness of your medicine, these unique, singular gifts that are yours alone. You become able to know your true purpose in this lifetime because those gifts from grace are given to you to enable you to bring forward your gifts, to express your gifts, to serve the well-being of our planet at this time, which enables you to fulfill your purpose. So they're the means by which your purpose becomes fulfilled. And so our true self helps us clarify what those gifts are and what that purpose is, and helps us become inspired to become fully potentiated, to bring our gifts forward fully, to not hold any part of ourselves or any part of our gifts back. Our true self is like a blueprint that remains intact, that remains whole, that we can contact and interact with in order to remember our true nature. This is the essence of who we are in this lifetime, what we were born to be. And in learning about our true selves and in forming a relationship with our true selves, we discover a sense of sufficiency. We have everything that we need. We were given by grace everything that we need in order to fulfill our purpose in being here. When it comes to working with our true selves, one of the reasons that I feel this is quite a radical teaching is because we don't need to do anything in order to be deserving of not only meeting, but also becoming our true selves. We don't need forgiveness. We don't need redemption. We don't need 10 years of training. We don't need to be enlightened. What's radical about this teaching and this practice is to consider the possibility that our true selves, the perfected version of us that we were born to be, is accessible right now. That we can contact them, experience them, come into relationship with them, and come into resonance with them right now without any hesitation, without any obstacle. And when we do so, we discover our true selves are unabashedly themselves. They're unapologetic. Our true selves don't contort themselves. to please anyone else. They don't conform in order to belong or fit in. They don't compromise themselves. Our true selves rest in their utter authenticity. And of course, for many of us, we struggle to do that. We struggle to let ourselves be everything that we are and all of who we are. And many of us have received messages from within our families of origin or the communities that we were raised within, from the broader culture at large that we're a part of, giving us reasons why not to be our authentic true selves. And so, in meeting our true selves for the first time, sometimes there can be an immediate sense of recognition and congruency, and sometimes less so. Sometimes it can be a little confronting to meet our true selves because we discover that we're not living fully in accord with our true selves, with the truth of who we are. And yet, therein lies one of the reasons to practice cultivating a relationship with this particular ally, because it helps bring us home, home to ourselves, home to our true essence, our true nature, home to a sense of purpose that is unprecedented and unrepeatable. There is no other you than you. There never has been, nor will there ever be. And so our true selves help us embrace our individuality, help us understand our uniqueness and singularity, that only we can become the unique people that we're here to be. Only you can become the unique you that you were made to be, that you were given all of the gifts from grace that you need in order to be. And so when we first encounter our true selves, it can be a very interesting experience. Sometimes they resemble us very closely. Sometimes they don't resemble us very closely at all. Sometimes their qualities are very similar to how we experience ourselves. Sometimes their qualities reveal to us aspects of our medicine that we didn't know existed before, or that we haven't had the support or the courage to turn towards and cultivate. And yet, once you become aware of the full extent of your medicine, the full extent of your gifts and potential, you can't ever unknow that. And so our true selves, in a certain way, hold accountable. They keep us honest about who we really are and why we're really here. And for some of you, I know this is a time when there is a sense of urgency. We don't have the luxury of dilly-dallying when it comes to not getting clear about our sense of purpose, when it comes to the gifts that we have and could share that are so very needed in the world. And so our true selves can serve as a powerful ally when it comes to helping us come into alignment with why we're here and what's needed in order for us to bring ourselves fully forward, to share all of our gifts and medicine for the benefit of all beings at a time when gifts and medicine are so desperately needed, at a time when everyone's gifts and medicine are so desperately needed. This is not a time for us to hold back. This is a time for us to share all of what we have, to contribute all of what we can in order to ensure that this time of unraveling leads to a period of wakefulness, rebuilding, regeneration, and revisioning that we all hope for. And so our true selves are going to make themselves available today by way of the practice of journeying. And this is a practice where we enter into a natural trance state in order to continue widening that aperture of perception and be able to perceive that which lies within the invisible worlds or realm or realms, those other spectrums of reality, those other subtler spectrums of reality that coexist with ours. We'll use drumming and singing and rattling and dancing in order to enter into a trance state, induced naturally by those means. And all that means is that our brainwave activity is going to shift from beta to alpha to theta. And theta is simply, if you will, a quiet, calm, expansive state. This is a practice that's predicated upon us learning how to stabilize our awareness in theta. And what we're going to do in order to enter into that theta state is stand up together in a few minutes and sing and dance and whistle and rattle and drum together. And then through your devices, there will be a 25-minute track of continuous drumming. And that's a repetitive, very simple drum beat that continues at the same pace for 25 minutes. And that's what serves to help you become stabilized in theta, so that in that state of consciousness, which is an altered state, and yet one in which we want to maintain our focus and concentration, you can use those beautiful, subtle pathways of perception that we began to open earlier in order to perceive possibly other spiritual allies, including your helping spirits, as I mentioned before, as well as your true self. And so, what I'm going to invite you to do once we go through the process of singing, whistling, dancing, rattling, and drumming together, which will raise your energy, will invigorate and enliven you, and I hope will also enable you to begin to shift into a theta state that will then be supported further by the continuous drumming that will play afterwards. And what I'm going to invite you to do once you begin to hear that single drum track, that single drummer, I should say, on the track drumming for you, is to hold a very specific intention in your heart. You can let everything else fall away aside from this. And that intention is simply to experience your true self. And you may do so in one of many possible ways. For some of you, it may be that your true self simply sits down next to you in the room where you are. I've encountered my true self in a number of settings, shall we say, over the years. And just this morning, as I was preparing for our time together, just behind me there in the little corner of my office where I practice, I sat on my cushion and rattled for myself, began to feel my subtle senses opening. And my true self appeared seated across from me on the little rug that I have in that corner of my office, seated across from me, radiating her beautiful heart light to me. And so for some of you, you may have a similar experience where your true self simply comes into the room where you are, and that's of course absolutely fine. For others of you, you may rather have the experience of leaving the place where you are. So let's talk a little bit about how that looks and also how that feels. So when we talk about journeying, and experiencing other dimensions of reality, sometimes that actually entails going somewhere. It doesn't always. Sometimes you remain just where you are, and the other dimensions of reality that coexist with us, that, as I mentioned previously, we tend to overlook, become revealed right where you are, all around you. However, it's also possible that you may rather have the experience of going somewhere. And if so, then I would like us to have a shared intention about where to send your awareness, what to determine as your destination, let's say. And that will be a place in nature where you feel completely yourself, completely at home, a place where you feel completely safe, a place that has been a sanctuary for you. Now, I will say you may not have ever been to this place. It may be a place that you have felt a resonance with and perhaps seen in a movie or read about or heard about in some other way, and that's fine too. A place that calls you, a place that is a spiritual home for you, where you feel at home, body, heart, mind, and spirit. And how you'll get there is that you will hold the intention to simply send your awareness there. This is one of the premises of journeying, that when we journey, one of the classical ways of describing it is that we're in two places at once. So your physical body is still here, seated exactly where you are, and yet some of your awareness begins to travel. Those two things can be true at the same time. So you can continue to experience yourself in the room. You might hear a dog barking, for example, either upstairs or down the street, which is clearly happening in the physical space where you are, and that you're clearly perceiving with your physical sense of hearing. And you can also at once send your awareness to this beautiful sanctuary somewhere here on earth that calls you. And that type of journey is a journey to experience the spiritual dimension of our physical world. And so, even if you go to a place that you've been before or a place that you've never been, you'll experience it differently than if you were there in an ordinary state of consciousness in ordinary reality. Because you're going to be in a theta state, in an altered state, and you're going to be experiencing the spiritual dimension of that physical place. And so, this is when we have the ability to contact the spirits of the flowers and plants, the spirits of the trees, the spirits of the ocean, and the spirits of the animals that inhabit the place that we're drawn to. And that's important to bear in mind because this is the invisible dimension of our physical world that we don't always remember is there, or perhaps haven't known exactly how to contact. And this practice enables us to have a way of contacting the spiritual aspects of this world very directly. So there's no intermediary. You yourself can begin to have a conversation with the spirit of a favorite tree, as I mentioned before. You yourself can begin to have a conversation with the spirit of the ocean. And I'm gesturing out here because that's what I see out my window, is the Pacific Ocean. And so when we go on this type of journey, which in core shamanism is called a middle world journey, we're experiencing the invisible dimension of the physical world that's always there. And again, that we may simply not have known how to contact, or that we're remembering how to contact for the purpose of understanding all of the spiritual gifts that exist in the places where we are and the places that we're drawn to. And so I would invite you, when you begin to hear again the sound of the single drum beat, and that period of time will last for 25 minutes, so there's plenty of time to sink into the practice. I would invite you to let yourself be drawn through space to the place that calls you, the sanctuary or the refuge that calls you today, where you feel fully like yourself, where you feel authentically you. And again, it might be exactly where you are, which would be wonderful. And either way, what we're asking is for our true selves to join us there. Now, some of you may find that by now, by way of us having spoken about the true self as much as we have thus far, you're already beginning to get a sense of your true self. And even if they begin to appear to you right here, they still may want to go with you to a place in the middle world. It's also possible that one of your other helping spirits, I know some of you have existing helping spirits that you have relationships with, because we invited them to be with us right now, it's also possible that they may accompany you, lead you or guide you, or even carry you to a place that's going to serve as the place where you'll meet with your true self. So these are all possibilities, and your experience may differ from what I'm saying. And of course, the most important thing is for you to trust whatever unfolds for you. These are intended to be guidelines, not hard and fast rules. When you encounter your true self, you'll be perceiving them through all of those subtle pathways of perception. This is how you begin to come to know them and to know how it feels to be in their presence, in their company. So you'll be able to perceive them using those subtle senses. You may see them, you may hear them, you may sense them, you may have a knowing that they're present. There's even clairgustation. Sometimes we get a particular taste in our mouths when we're in the presence of a particular helping spirit, or sometimes something is given to us to taste when we're journeying in these hidden realms. There's also the clairolfactory sense. You may smell something in particular. Perhaps you'll smell gardenias or roses when you're in the presence of your true self. Everything that you perceive matters. Everything that you perceive is in answer to or in response to the intention. And so it's all being shown to you to give you information, to give you the experience of your true self through all of those pathways of perception. And just like when you're in your regular life, relying upon your ordinary senses, your physical senses, we don't necessarily draw clear distinctions between them in the course of a day. Normally, they're all online at the same time. So I can see the screen and at the same time hear one of my dogs barking, and at the same time feel my body resting in my chair, and at the same time feel the temperature of the air on my skin, etc. And so similarly, when we journey, although any one of our clairs or all of our clairs could be active at any moment in time, there isn't necessarily a clear, rigid distinction between them. They're woven together. So there's a perceptual experience that includes those different pathways that's woven together for many people quite seamlessly, much as when we're perceiving in our ordinary lives, in ordinary life, in our physical bodies, in our ordinary spaces. And so when you meet your true self, what I would like you to do is open to all of the ways that you're experiencing them. Notice everything about them. Notice how they look. Notice how you feel in their presence. Notice how they speak. Notice how they carry themselves. Notice the qualities that they seem to emanate. And this is where it becomes helpful to be able to perceive with your heart light. And should you at any time in the course of the exercise begin to feel distracted or even a little bit drowsy, which sometimes happens, bearing in mind that when we shift from beta to alpha to theta, well, the next stage is delta, which is the sleep state. And so therein lies the importance of us trying to stabilize in theta so that we don't drift off to sleep, although sometimes people get drowsy, which is quite understandable. And so if you begin to notice yourself getting distracted or even a little bit drowsy, you can just come back to your heart light. Because when we ground in our heart lights and open to perceiving and receiving that way, what happens is that we begin to learn the language of the heart, the language of spirit that we share with our helping spirits, the language that you will each cultivate with your own helping spirits will be unique. It will be a unique combination of your clairs. Some people are more clairaudient than clairvoyant. Similarly, in our ordinary lives, some of us are a little bit more sensitive to sound or aware of sound. Some of us are more oriented towards what we perceive visually. The same is true when it comes to our clairs. They're not necessarily all even, shall we say, or all online with the same quality of perception. But they do nonetheless cooperate together. And through those clairs, I would like you to notice everything that you can perceive about your true self. And just as if you met somebody in a store or at a coffee shop, and you could feel their qualities, you could feel their warmth, you could feel their humor, you could feel their kindness. Similarly, your true self will emanate their qualities, which are your qualities. And so it's like looking in the mirror, seeing yourself, but again, the perfected version of yourself. And so once you begin to experience your true self, what I'd like you to do is ask them about their medicine. And the way you can pose that question would be to ask them, please share with me everything that I could see and know about your medicine. And of course, what you're learning about is your medicine, the gifts from grace that you were born with. These are the gifts and qualities that your true self carries. And so, in asking directly to learn about those gifts and qualities, what happens is that you become introduced to your true essence, which, as I mentioned earlier, may surprise you in certain ways. I hope will delight you in many ways. And this may be a dialogue, an interaction. You may feel that you can hear your true self's voice. For some of you, it may rather be as though you're hearing them in your awareness, sort of telepathically. Either way, they may show you certain things. They can communicate using a variety of means, through gesture, through symbols, through pantomime. They may be very playful. There may be humor. All of the ways in which the helping spirits communicate with us use the language of the heart, which is why beginning with a heart-light practice helps us be very receptive to receiving their guidance and their wisdom. One way to think about that is that often our helping spirits speak to us using metaphor, which is the language of the heart. So it can be quite poetic, maybe more so than the ordinary conversations that you're used to having with other people. And so I'd like you to take your time and to learn everything you can about your true self once you've posed that question to them. Please teach me everything that I can see and know about your medicine. And if you have questions, then ask more questions. If you'd like more clarification, if you'd like to explore something in more depth, use the time to gain as much insight and as much information as you can. And then I would like you to ask for an attunement. And an attunement is a means by which you come into resonance with your true self. This is how you can begin to come into harmony with your true self. And this is a very important part of the practice, because when you encounter your true self, you may naturally wonder how you can be more like them. How could I live my life as my true self? How could I perceive the true selves of others? What would it be like if we lived in a world where we were all acting in alignment with and in accord with our true selves, where there was no sense of disparity or separation between us and our true selves? If we could perceive in others their true selves, their innate goodness. This is an ally who reminds us of our inherent worth. And the practice of receiving an attunement brings us into harmony with that state of being. Because, as I mentioned previously, our true selves are completely unapologetic when it comes to their inherent worth, not from a place of arrogance or conceit, but rather because it's everyone's birthright to feel a fundamental sense of wellness and wholeness. This is the intactness that the true self is, that the true self embodies. There is no separation between the true self and wholeness, or between the true self and authenticity. And so the practice of coming into resonance with our true selves becomes the means by which we become our true selves. We become closer and closer and closer, and then eventually indistinguishable from them. Now, I understand that that may sound aspirational, and I think that's fair. And what a beautiful aspiration for us to hold together. And what a beautiful practice for us to engage in together. Because once again, what a beautiful world we would live in if everyone prioritized living from a place of inherent worth. And if knowing our inherent worth didn't diminish anyone else, if embodying our inherent worth didn't diminish anybody else, but rather lifted everyone else up. So in other words, if we can start by being our true selves, we give everyone around us permission to do the same. So everyone gets lifted up. This isn't about only us getting lifted up. It's about everybody becoming lifted up. And so when we ask for an attunement, and I will say attunements happen by any number of means, our helping spirits, including our true selves are endlessly inventive when it comes to providing us with attunements. It could be that there's a gazing practice, so you may gaze into the eyes of your true self. It could be that they place a hand on your heart and a hand on their heart, and vice versa. You place a hand on your heart and a hand on theirs. It could be that they rest their hands on your shoulders. So sometimes attunements happen through touch. Sometimes attunements happen through gazing. Sometimes attunements happen seemingly invisibly. It doesn't seem as though very much is actually occurring, but they may sit next to you or in front of you, and you may simply breathe together. And they're holding such a strong, clear frequency that they naturally magnetize you to come into resonance with them. It's possible, since we've invited the presence of other helping spirits who may very well conduct you to your sanctuary where you'll meet your true self, or who may very well be with you right now where you are and join you if your encounter with your true self happens right in the place where you are. It may be that they have a part to play in providing you with an attunement. So after you've identified your true self, then you're going to ask them about their medicine, and then you're going to ask them for an attunement. And I know this is a lot to remember, but I'm going to add one last thing, which is the possibility that as a further step for lessening and possibly eliminating whatever gap you may initially feel between your true self, is to become merged with them. And what that means, just as my hands are showing, is that two becomes one. So you melt into each other so that there's no distinction between you and your true self. You become one. Now, there are natural apertures at the back of the head, the neck, the heart, the kidneys, and the sacrum that are called spirit gates. And these natural apertures are a part of what helps us connect with the spirit world. And for some of you, you may find that your true self merges with you by coming through your spirit gate or gates, coming into you from behind, filling you up. So again, there's no more of a sense of separateness, you and your true self. You become one. Now, in time, we can sustain that merged state for longer and longer, because with time and with practice, again, what may start out as feeling like a wide gap between you and your true self gradually lessens and lessens. And that's through practice. And these are the practices that I would suggest, if you feel inspired to, that you continue utilizing in order to facilitate that process of learning more about your true self, which helps you understand your true nature, your gifts, why you're here, your soul's purpose, and how to fulfill your soul's purpose in this lifetime, how to become fully potentiated. So that answers some fairly significant questions about who we are and why we're here. And then in the process of learning about the true self, there's already a way that we begin to come into resonance with our medicine. And you could learn about your true self over years, just as you may know from living with a spouse, or from your best friend, or from your pet, your cat or your dog or your turtle. There's so much to discover about ourselves and each other. It's endless. And similarly with our true selves. And so I would invite you to consider that there may not be an end to what you can learn about them. So this is one of those practices that you could do repeatedly, ongoingly, open-endedly, and just continue to learn more. And then with the attunement process, again, you're coming into harmony and coming into resonance. You're experiencing that sense of inherent worth. You're experiencing your natural radiance. You're experiencing the fullness of all of your gifts. And then you carry that experience with you into your day. And then in merging, there's no longer any separation. Now, what many of you will find is that you'll merge and then there'll be a natural unmerging that happens. And so it won't be a sustained state at this time. It will be a taste. And each time you take one step further, you get one step closer to inhabiting your true self all the time and to experiencing that true essence, the sense of completeness and wholeness. So at the end of the drumming, as I mentioned, there'll be continuous drumming for a little bit longer than 20 minutes, and then the drum beat will change, and there'll be what's called a callback. And so that's where the drum beat changes. It gets quite a bit faster, and there'll be a pattern that you'll hear. And that's the indicator that it's time to come back. And so if indeed you have gone somewhere, then when you hear the sound of the drumming change, when you hear that drum beat change, that's the signal to begin to complete the journey and make your way back. And so I would invite you to take a moment to give thanks at the end of the journey for everything that you've received and learned, and hopefully all of the ways in which you've become uplifted. And then you'll simply retrace your steps back, all the way back into the room. So again, if you've gone somewhere where you've experienced the spiritual dimension of a beautiful place in nature, a beautiful refuge or sanctuary, then you'll just gather yourself up, gather your intention, and retrace your steps all the way back into the room. And as you come back, if indeed you've gone somewhere, I would like you to remember that you're bringing everything back with you. So all of what you experienced, all of what you've come to know, all of what you've learned. Our true selves are allies who are always with us. And so I do want to say that although many of you may find that where you meet is in a place that's a beautiful sanctuary for you, I don't want that to seem to imply that you have to go somewhere in order to meet them, but rather that that's simply a beautiful place to meet because it's so supportive and it's a place that's so resourcing for you. But our true selves are with us all the time. And much like with our helping spirits, and much like with the other dimensions of reality that we coexist with, we simply forget that they're there. We often conduct ourselves in ways that don't include maintaining an awareness of their presence and remembering to call upon them. And so my hope is that after today, once you become introduced to your true self, who is such a powerful spiritual ally, that you'll be inspired to continue to call upon them. And you could simply repeat this same practice over and over again. And of course, in the fullness of time, you and your true self may develop other ways of being with one another, other ways for you to become imbued with their qualities. And so, of course, I will leave that to you and to the wisdom of your true self. And yet, my hope is that this will be a bridge for you, and for some of you, a practice you continue for many moons. And on that note, I'll just end by offering my gratitude to my teacher, Betsy Bergstrom, who introduced me to the practice of working with the true self. Speaking of many moons ago, I confess I don't even remember how many years ago it was, but I must say I am someone who continues to practice in the exact same way. Maybe I'm not a very imaginative person, but I do still practice with my true self in the exact same way that I was shown many years ago as a student of Betsy's. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge her as we begin to prepare to do the practice, and offer myself as an example of someone who continues to do this practice in the manner in which I'm sharing it with you, because I still find it to be so valuable, so potent, and so helpful. We all need a simple, direct, immediate way to remember who we are and to remember our beauty and our goodness. And this offers those things. So, my dears, thank you for listening so attentively. And we're all now finally going to stand and using whatever you have within reach, and it might be a bottle of vitamins that hopefully don't turn to dust. It might be a rattle, it might be a drum, it might be that you just listen to me, which is of course fine. And we'll just move our bodies and sing and whistle and dance and rattle and drum for a few minutes. And then I will set my drum down, and that's when the recorded drumming will play through all of your devices. And you'll do the practice, and then when you hear the drum beat change at the very end of the recording, when the callback begins, I'll invite you to come back and join me back here. Okay, so let's prepare to journey together. So coming all the way back into your body and into the room, making sure that you're all the way back and that you've brought with you all of the goodness from your journey. And I'd like to say that I'm cognizant of the fact that I had you engage in a practice involving 4 steps, and that while some of you may very well have completed all 4 steps, it's certainly possible not everyone did. And that was intentional on my part because I know you'll continue to have access to this recording. And so if you made it through 1 or 2 of the steps, but not quite through all of them, then you could simply re-listen to the recording and redo the practice until you can complete all 4 steps. So that would be my invitation to you. And on the note of invitations, I would like you to know that my focus is on providing training to people of all ages and predilections. I love to train people who are interested in the spirit world. That's the commonality that we all share, although we all come from diverse backgrounds and work within different professional fields and so on. And so I offer a 3-day introductory workshop that takes place in various locations in person and also virtually. And there is a $50 coupon code in the chat for you so that you can register for one of those workshops and receive that discount. And that is the prerequisite for my year-long program. I offer actually a 3-year professional training for people who want to provide spiritual or shamanic healing on behalf of others. And it has 2 levels. The first level is the year-long program, and the second level is a 2-year program. So I have an upcoming year-long program starting in September. And the introductory workshop is at once a standalone workshop that you don't need to follow with anything further if you don't wish to. And it also serves as the prerequisite for the year-long program that starts in September. So I very much hope you'll visit my website, which is juliemkramer.com, in order to learn about those offerings. And I warmly invite you to join me at one of the upcoming introductory workshops. There are 5 of them coming up in the coming months in different locations, as I said, and one virtually. And it would be wonderful to have the chance to deepen with you, to help you meet even more of your helping spirits. And as we bring this practice to a close, I want to thank you for taking this time with me. And I hope that in the days, weeks, months, and years to come, you will express all of the beauty and goodness and rich medicine that your true self carries. Thank you. And I gather some of you may have time to stay and to ask questions. So I'm just going to take a little gander in the chat and see if there are any questions in the chat. Yeah, so I'll start with the question there that somebody posted, which is, how do you come out of the trance state when you're practicing alone? So the answer to the question is the callback. And it certainly is a practice, and I would say a discipline, to not only enter into an altered state for the purpose of journeying, but also to bring the practice to an end. And so with the journey, there's a very clear beginning, middle, and end. And what signals the end of the practice is the sound of the callback. And so even if you're by yourself and in your own home, if you're listening to a recording of shamanic drumming, there'll be a callback at the end that will be the signal for you to return from the journey, to retrace your steps all the way back into the room where you are, and to end the journey. And coincidingly, there is, or correspondingly, I should say, there is a way in which your attention will return to an ordinary state of consciousness quite naturally. And if that doesn't seem to have happened, then you can also repeat the callback. If you feel like you need a stronger ending, you can also repeat that. So you could repeat that using your own drum, or you could just rewind the recording a little bit in order to listen to it again. It is I don't want to say startling, but it's a noticeable change from the steadiness of the drum beat. And that's intentional because it is meant to bring you out of the trance state and to gradually help you return to an ordinary state of consciousness. And then let's see if there are any other questions in the chat. Yes, someone asked, can you offer any thoughts or insights because it felt as though their true self emerged partially, that they got a glimpse of their true self, but didn't emerge fully. And I would say that's very normal. And typically, when people, especially those newer to this way of practicing, or who have not had an experience with their true self or even another helping spirit, often those initial experiences can feel a little fleeting. So there can be a sense of having a glimpse or an impression initially, and you simply build upon that with practice. And so I would say keep trying, because with each time that you practice, your clairs will open more fully. There'll be more of a sense of familiarity and easefulness and comfort. And so I would say just continue to practice, and that will help you begin to have a more consistent and more complete experience of your true self. And in the event that I may not see someone whose hand is up, feel free to just sing out if you have a question. And I would also add that if anyone feels inspired to share their experience, this would be a wonderful opportunity to do that. So once again, you're very welcome to unmute yourself. Oh, there's Kim's hand. Yes, Kim, hello again.
Hi, this is silly. I I feel silly. I felt um like twitches. I usually get these
Mm-hmm.
energy flashes when I'm doing different type of practices. So this was happened before we did the practice. I did feel like there was a shadow behind me when you were speaking, but I'm not sure if that is that I just imagine it, or is that actual the way it happened. But the silly thing was, like, towards the end, for some reason I developed an appetite. Is that normal?
I'm laughing, Kim, because having been to various retreat centers over the years, both as a student earlier on and subsequently in leading my own workshops and retreats, I've heard from various staff members at various retreat centers that people who do this kind of work have very big appetites. I'm told they eat the most and they spend the most money in the stores.
Okay.
So what I would offer is that although it may not seem as though we're doing anything, it's not like, we've just done an aerobics class or spent 20 minutes on the treadmill, and yet it does require calories. We are focusing and concentrating and using our intention. And I think that does consume calories. And so it's very typical that people feel hungry, albeit surprising. And so I've heard that again and again. It always happens to me, but I'm one of those people who's hungry all the time. So I don't know if I'm a very helpful example. And what I would say about the twitching is that when we shift from a beta state to an alpha state and then onwards to a theta state, much as when you're falling asleep at night, it's typical that there are those releases in the body because it is an expansive state of consciousness. It's also a more relaxed state. And so I certainly don't want to by any means diagnose what you were describing, but rather normalize the fact that people typically report feeling those, if you will, electrical impulses. And I would say commonly what people report is that it's just like when you're falling asleep and your body has those little jolts, that we're shifting into a more down regulated state where the nervous system is not quite as attenuated or quite as aroused. and there's more of a calm quality overall. So I think that's very normal. And then, with regard to what you were describing, sometimes our helping spirits first appear to us as outlines of themselves. And so it's typical for people to report a shadow or a presence when there's a helping spirit whose presence is becoming known or seen or felt, but not yet fully. So, not with all of the full details. So, sometimes it can look like an outline, or it can look like a rough shape. Sometimes there can be color or the absence of color, but a sense of there being a presence that has yet to come fully into focus. And so, again, I would say oftentimes the answer to a variety of questions is keep practicing and see how that shape begins to reveal itself in more detail, with more precision, with more features, etc., which I'm sure will happen in time. You're welcome, Kim. I'll just take a gander at the chat again, just a moment. Hmm. Yes, somebody else was mentioning having convulsions, perhaps a stronger version of what Kim was suggesting. And again, I want to be mindful of not providing a diagnosis for anyone. And at the same time, I know that my body can convulse before going into a sleep state. And so that seems to me to be normal for some people and part of how our systems can discharge, perhaps even discharging tension as we're settling into a theta state. Let's see, there's a hand up. Judy, yes, please, your question. Oh, Judy, you're still muted, so if you would please unmute yourself. There you
Thank
are.
you.
You're welcome.
I just was going to ask a similar question to this one about convulsions. Not that I didn't experience it as convulsions, but for the entire time moving quite strongly. And this is a new experience for me, so I don't know that I've had any, I can't say, I'm guessing that I was sensing my guides in a physical sense, like you talk about the various clairs. I don't know which clairs would come to me, but the way that it moved in my body was quite rhythmic and fast and for the entire time. So I'm guessing that's how it came in. And I just said the things about the four things, seeking and making requests about the four things coming to me. And I guess what you're suggesting, just keep practicing. I haven't got I didn't get I didn't get a clear aha, I see it, I feel it, I know it, like that.
Yes. And was this your first time, Judy, entering into a natural trance state with the sound of drumming?
I think so. I think I've gone into natural trance states at other times, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
particular approach, yeah. And the
Yes.
particular approach with these, if you like, assignments
Mm-hmm.
of what I was carrying in as wishes and requests and inquiries, like that
Yes.
combination of the.
Yes. Yes. And given how those sensations were in your body, did you feel like you wanted to get up and move around?
Oh, it was just that's where I started and that's where it stayed. And I had,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for the suggestion about vitamin pills. I had those plans, and sometimes they were in the same rhythm, and sometimes I don't know, I just let the physicality take me.
Yes, yes, beautiful. Well, that's exactly what I would suggest. And let's bear in mind that these natural trance states that can be achieved through these very simple means, using percussion, using dancing, using whistling, and also simply with the intention of entering into a natural trance state. These are ecstatic states of being. And so it's very common for people to have ecstatic sensations in their bodies. And of course, what that means for everyone may be a little different. And some people prefer to move around while they're journeying. For some people, to stay seated or even lying down doesn't quite feel as natural. And of course, the benefit of you being in your own home is that you can move about without bumping into other people. Whereas if there were 50 of us in a gathering space at a retreat center, we'd have to be very mindful of not tumbling over one another. But if you're in your own space, you may also want to experiment with actually letting your body move naturally, seeing what feels organic for you. And those feelings that you're describing are very, very normal. And again, these are ecstatic states. And for clairsentient people, which it sounds like you are, it's a very visceral experience.
Yes, it felt like I couldn't do it. It's kind of, we've started at 5 in the morning here, and so I
Oh,
couldn't take you out into the garden. But I would like to have had, it felt very much like it would have been had my feet on the physical ground, like on
yes.
earth while that was going on. And so next time I can set it up so I can do that.
Yes, beautiful. And it's so helpful that you know that about yourself, because for some people it doesn't feel natural to be inside, let alone lying down. They want to be outside with their feet in the sand or feet in the dirt and get to move around. And so you'll be able to access the recording and then you can take it outside with you and be mobile. And thank you, golly, I'm not sure that I would have gotten up at 5 a.m. in order to teach. Thank you for getting up in order to practice.
Well, I'm at the other end of the earth.
Yes, well, I really appreciate you waking up together with me, and I hope that you'll follow that inspiration and go outside.
Yeah, thank you. I will.
You're welcome. Good. Let's see. Kathleen, your question.
Hi.
Hi.
This was a great experience. Perhaps you could help with a metaphor, I believe, that I experienced. So prior to sitting down for the drumming, my way of experiencing my guides is through nature.
Yes.
So I thought what I would do, I got an inkling to look for a hawk, because usually they're the messengers for me. They signify certain things. So I looked into the tree, and I have bird feeders, birds every day, woodpeckers, and woodpeckers purportedly are symbols of drummers, bringing new rhythms into your life. I look into the tree, I see a bird that has the attributes of a woodpecker, the red head, the black and white kind of feathering on the side. And yet it didn't look like a woodpecker. It looked like a warbler. It looked like something very different. And then eventually it stretched out its body. And I could see, in fact, it was a woodpecker. I was like, wow, it was a very different vantage point. It was interesting. And then I came and joined the drumming, which felt like 5 minutes, it was like whoosh, like, wow, I can't. So I was just curious, as that's my way of connecting. So it's more sporadic and spontaneous. And I would just appreciate any of your thoughts on this. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Well, first, I'd like to take a moment to admire your background.
Yeah. It's not my true background, but it is one. Yes. Yes.
Yes, so Kathleen, what I would offer is that while, of course, there are writings about different animals and the visitations that we experience with them and what the significance of those things may be, what's also true is that it's possible that the medicine that a particular animal's visitation or spirit animal's visitation brings you may be different from what you would find if you were to Google that animal or if you were to research what people typically associate with them. And so what I often recommend is that you use that as the focus of the journey. So you can undertake a journey to meet with that particular animal spirit in order to learn about their medicine. So just as with the true self, we were asking to learn about their medicine because their medicine is specific for us. And of course, with the true self, their medicine is a mirror of us and of our medicine. With an animal spirit, whether they're coming just to help you that day, to assist with a particular process of inquiry or to provide healing or a message that day, or whether they're an animal or animal spirit with whom you have an ongoing relationship, their medicine may be surprising. And so it can always be helpful to journey and ask them directly, teach me about your medicine. What can I see and know about your medicine? What we're working with is the premise that these encounters, whether in physical form or in spirit form, are never random. They're always very deliberate. They're always very intentional. They come at significant times and they're noteworthy. So we're learning about how to begin to notice and trust those signs. And then when it comes to interpreting them, being able to journey gives us a means to be able to ask them directly. You could journey to Woodpecker and ask directly, tell me about the nature of your medicine and tell me about the meaning of this particular visitation today when you appeared in a way that was not as distinctive, when it seemed like you could have been something else. What were you trying to show me? Tell me what the meaning of that was, because you sound very knowledgeable when it comes to bird sightings and when it comes to identifying birds. And so if you were confused, that's noteworthy to me because that doesn't sound usual. And so I would get really curious about that. And why was woodpecker showing themselves to you in that way, imagining that it was deliberate? Then what's the meaning of it? What can you glean from that?
Thank
How
you.
does that, you're welcome, Kathleen. How does that sit with you?
It it works because I am familiar with birds. So to not recognize this bird and yet to at the same time, I'm like, I'm sure there's something there. And yes, so I'll leave.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This was a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that it's going to be recorded that we can listen to it again because I plan on doing that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. And isn't that interesting that that was a 25-minute recording of drumming? Isn't it interesting that it went by so quickly? And that is sometimes what people experience. And it sounds like you took to it very naturally. So I hope you do indeed return to the recording. You're welcome. Well, my dears, I'm just glancing at the time and noticing that we've come to the end of our time, and I want to be mindful of your schedules today. And so I'd just like to thank you ever so much for joining me today. What a pleasure to have the chance to practice with you. And I hope you continue. So do take advantage of the recording and continue practicing. And please feel free, as I said, to visit my website if you would like to practice further together. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.